In the journey of understanding human behavior, one of the most revealing dynamics is what truly happens when the empath finally withdraws from a toxic cycle. For years, patterns of manipulation, charm, and control may feel like normal parts of a relationship, but the truth only comes to the surface when validation is no longer given freely. At that moment, masks begin to fall and hidden intentions are revealed. This exploration isn't just about the narcissist, but about the strength of the empath, about what happens when someone who has always carried the weight of emotional responsibility finally sets boundaries. This is the moment where clarity begins, where illusions collapse, and where authentic self-awareness becomes possible. What follows is not just a description of behavior, but a roadmap to recognizing manipulation, protecting one's sensitivity, and transforming pain into strength. As you listen, allow yourself to see the patterns clearly, and prepare to step into a deeper understanding of both toxic dynamics and personal power. Most dangerous discovery wasn't about narcissism alone, it was about who the narcissist becomes when the empath stops playing along, and why this transformation either leads to complete psychological breakdown or reveals the manipulative core that was always there. In his work on projection and shadow psychology, documented what I call supply withdrawal syndrome, a pattern where individuals with narcissistic traits would maintain their grandiose self-image through empathic partners' endless accommodation, then undergo dramatic personality shifts when that validation was suddenly removed. Called this discovery dangerous because these individuals possessed what he described as false self-systems that collapsed without external mirroring. When the empath stopped playing along, the narcissist didn't simply become sad or lonely. They transformed into what termed the unmasked shadow, revealing either their capacity for genuine change or their true exploitative nature. What made this discovery so disturbing too was the predictability. He could forecast exactly how different types of narcissists would respond when their primary source of validation withdrew, and why most would escalate their manipulation tactics rather than face their authentic self. Today, I'll reveal Jung's insights about who the narcissist becomes when the empath stops playing along, and why he believed this crisis either forces genuine self-confrontation or exposes the psychological predator that accommodation had been feeding all along, the patient who transformed overnight. His breakthrough case involved a patient describing their partner's complete personality shift within days of establishing boundaries. The partner, charming and attentive for years, suddenly became what documented as unrecognizably hostile. When accommodation ended, observed something chilling, the partner began systematically using intimate knowledge against the patient, weaponizing shared vulnerabilities, private fears, and cherished memories as psychological attacks. This wasn't emotional distress, but calculated warfare. The individual revealed predatory intelligence previously hidden beneath loving behavior. Wrote, "They demonstrated sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation that could only have been developed through extended observation and practice." The patient described feeling like they'd been living with a stranger who had been studying them. The partner knew exactly which emotional buttons to press, which guilt tactics would be most effective, and which threats would cause maximum psychological damage. Realized this wasn't a person changing under stress. This was someone's true nature finally becoming visible. The loving behavior had been performance designed to maintain access to validation supply. When that supply was threatened, the performance ended and the authentic self emerged. This case shattered Jung's assumptions about relationship dynamics and revealed what he called psychological parasitism, individuals who feed off others' emotional resources while providing only strategic affection in return. The false self architecture discovered that narcissistic individuals construct what I call validation dependency systems, psychological structures that require constant external confirmation to maintain their self-image. Unlike healthy individuals who develop internal self-worth, these people create identity through others' reactions. Identified three components of their false self-system. Mirror dependency. They construct their entire self-image from external reflection. Without constant validation, they experience what called identity dissolution, panic, terror, that they'll cease to exist without someone confirming their importance. Shadow evacuation. Observe the I project all negative traits onto partners while keeping only positive qualities for themselves. The empathic partner becomes a psychological dumping ground for everything the narcissist cannot accept about their own nature. Control through confusion. They maintain dominance through what called reality, distortion tactics, gaslighting, emotional manipulation, and strategic affection that keeps partners uncertain about their own perceptions and dependent on the narcissist's version of reality. Realize this system creates psychological vampirism. The narcissist drains their partner's energy while contributing nothing authentic. The relationship becomes a one-way extraction operation disguised as love. When empaths withdraw validation, this entire system collapses. Observe the narcissist's response reveals their true psychological structure, and it's often far more predatory than anyone imagined. The escalation that exposes everything. Identified why narcissists become more dangerous when empaths establish boundaries. They enter what he called supply panic mode, where their psychological survival feels threatened. Documented a predictable escalation pattern. First comes charm offensive resurrection, suddenly becoming the person the empath always hoped for. They may recreate early relationship magic, make promises of change, or demonstrate perfect understanding of previously ignored needs. When charm fails, observe the shift to guilt siege warfare. They weaponize the empath's compassion through claims of devastation, threats of self-harm, or accusations of cruelty. Noted, they instinctively target the empath's inability to tolerate causing pain, exploiting this vulnerability with surgical precision. The final phase, called scorched earth psychology. When other tactics fail, some narcissists attempt to destroy what they cannot control. Sabotaging relationships, spreading damaging information, or engaging in reputation assassination to isolate their former validation source. Realize this escalation reveals the narcissist's authentic nature. They were never loving partners, but emotional predators who had learned to disguise exploitation as care. The empath's withdrawal doesn't create toxicity, it exposes manipulation that was always present. Most disturbing, too, was the strategic intelligence these individuals displayed. Their escalation wasn't emotional desperation, but calculated psychological warfare designed to break down boundaries and restore control. If you've experienced someone becoming more manipulative when you set boundaries, comment. They showed me who they really were. The 4 faces of narcissistic unmasking. Identified 4 distinct patterns narcissists follow when their validation supply withdraws, each revealing different aspects of their true psychological structure. The desperate hunter. These narcissists cannot psychologically survive without external validation. Observe, they become parasites seeking new hosts, cycling through love bombing, guilt trips, threats, and promises with increasing desperation. Documented, they often develop abandonment psychosis, losing touch with appropriate boundaries in their pursuit of restored control. They may engage in stalking, public scenes, or harassment, revealing their belief that others exist primarily to serve their emotional needs. The rage demon. Jung identified narcissists whose false self dissolves into primitive fury when control is threatened. Their anger isn't about loss, but about property rebellion. They're furious. Their psychological possession declared independence. These individuals often engage in punishment campaigns designed to make empaths regret their departure. Noted, their rage typically intensifies over time because it's fueled by narcissistic injury rather than grief, revealing the shallow nature of their original attachment. The strategic replacer. Observe narcissists who immediately seek new validation sources rather than processing the relationship's end. They often maintain supply backup systems, multiple relationships specifically, designed as validation alternatives. Noted, strategic replacers frequently use new relationships as weapons, ensuring former partners know they've been replaced with someone better. This reveals their view of people as interchangeable validation providers rather than unique individuals worthy of authentic connection. The master manipulator. This most concerning category represents narcissists who use the crisis as an opportunity to develop more sophisticated control tactics. They study what went wrong and adapt their approach for future relationships or reconciliation attempts. These individuals often adopt therapy language, spiritual concepts, or self-help terminology as manipulation tools. Observed, they become empathy mimics, appearing to develop emotional intelligence while actually learning more effective exploitation techniques. The dangerous escalation psychology identified specific psychological mechanisms that explain why narcissists often become more harmful when empaths withdraw, making this period the most dangerous in toxic relationships. Identity collapse terror. Observe that narcissists experience validation withdrawal as literal survival threat because their identity depends entirely on external confirmation. Without their empathic mirror, they face what's called psychological annihilation anxiety. This terror drives increasingly desperate behavior as their false self begins crumbling. Noted, they'll often escalate to extreme tactics rather than face the emptiness their grandiose persona was designed to hide. Control, restoration. compulsion. Documented that narcissists operate from what he called dominance dependency. Their psychological stability requires maintaining power over others. When control is threatened, they automatically activate escalating tactics to restore their position. Observe this compulsion operates below conscious awareness. They don't. To choose to become more manipulative. Their psychological system activates what called predator protocols that feel like necessary self-defense. Reality distortion, amplification. Identified that narcissists often respond to criticism or abandonment by creating what he called victim mythology, elaborate stories where they become the wronged party and their former partner becomes the abuser. This isn't conscious deception, but what termed protective self-mythology. Their psyche cannot tolerate responsibility for relationship failure, so it automatically generates narratives that preserve their self-image while demonizing those who threaten it. Projection weaponization. Noted that when narcissists lose their primary projection target, they often engage in shadow spreading, seeing their own traits reflected in multiple people throughout their environment. This creates persecution fantasies that justify increasingly hostile behavior. They may begin campaigns against their former partner's friends, family, or colleagues, attempting to convince others of the empath's supposed toxicity, while positioning themselves as victims. Protection protocol. Develop systematic approaches to help empaths recognize narcissistic patterns and protect themselves during dangerous withdrawal periods. Early warning recognition. Taught empaths to identify what he called false intimacy, signals that narcissists use to create artificial connection. This includes trauma bonding through shared vulnerabilities, future faking with elaborate promises, and love bombing with overwhelming attention that feels intoxicating but creates dependency. Emphasized, recognizing empathy simulation versus authentic emotional intelligence. True empathy includes considering others' needs without expecting appreciation, while narcissistic empathy focuses on appearing caring to maintain their image or secure validation. Manipulation immunity training developed techniques for resisting what he called emotional hijacking when narcissists trigger intense feelings, expecting forgiveness, seeking personal development resources independently, and maintaining behavioral changes regardless of relationship outcomes. Emphasized that authentic transformation required years of consistent work and included regression periods, while false transformation appeared rapid and perfectly tailored to reconciliation goals. Building narcissist-resistant communities. Recognized that empaths need specific strategies to avoid repeating patterns with other manipulative individuals, as their empathic nature often makes them recurring targets. Healthy individual recognition. Jung identified early indicators of emotional maturity, demonstrating genuine interest in others without expecting constant appreciation, handling disagreement without becoming hostile or withdrawing affection, and taking responsibility for their emotions without expecting others to manage their emotional state. Noted that emotionally healthy people can discuss their needs clearly without manipulation tactics, respect boundaries without requiring extensive justification, and show consistent character rather than dramatic personality shifts based on circumstances. Manipulation, resistance building. Taught empaths to develop what he called psychological antibodies against common control tactics. This includes recognizing when someone's emotional crises consistently coincide with boundary-setting attempts, identifying patterns of selective empathy, where concern only appears when it benefits them, and noticing obligation creation through excessive early generosity designed to create debt feelings. Emphasized, developing external reality verification through trusted advisors who can provide objective perspectives when manipulation may be distorting perception. Authentic connection cultivation. Recommended seeking relationships with what he called secure individuals, people who provide consistent appreciation without creating dependency or demanding unlimited accommodation. These relationships include mutual emotional investment, reciprocal consideration of each other's needs, and natural conflict resolution that focuses on solutions rather than blame or control. Stressed the importance of communities where sensitivity is valued and protected rather than exploited, and where empathy is appreciated without being taken advantage of. What actually changes the unmasking process? Documented that narcissists' post-withdrawal behavior reveals their authentic character rather than creating new personality traits. The performance collapse. Observe that narcissists initially attempt to maintain their persona through intensified charm, but without consistent validation feedback, this performance becomes unsustainable. During this phase, noted they often reveal entitlement leakage, making demands that expose their belief that others exist to serve their needs. Their frustration when usual tactics fail reveals the calculated nature of their previous behavior. The control desperation phase, when charm fails, documented predictable escalation to dominance tactics, including guilt manipulation, emotional blackmail, and reality distortion campaigns. Emphasize this escalation isn't new behavior, but the removal of restraints that had hidden their authentic approach to relationships. Their willingness to cause psychological harm to restore control reveals their true priorities. The supply replacement hunt identified that most narcissists respond to validation loss by seeking new sources rather than engaging in self-reflection. This process reveals what called relationship interchangeability, their view of people as providers of specific psychological services rather than unique individuals worthy of authentic connection. The long-term character revelation observed. That extended observation reveals consistent patterns across multiple relationships and situations, often leading to social consequence accumulation as their manipulation tactics become recognized. Noted that unmasked narcissists rarely learn from repeated relationship failures, but develop increasingly sophisticated victim narratives to explain their pattern of relationship destruction. If you've watched someone's true character emerge when they lost control, comment, the mask always falls eventually. The cultural warning system. Believed understanding narcissistic patterns serves broader social functions beyond individual protection. Collective pattern recognition. Observed that narcissistic individuals often thrive in cultures prioritizing image over substance and competitive dominance over collaborative growth. Their behavior reveals widespread cultural dysfunction disguised as normal social interaction. When empaths learn to recognize and resist these patterns, noted they become cultural antibodies that refuse to enable toxic dynamics and force more authentic relationship standards through their choices. Prevention through education. Emphasize that understanding manipulation tactics serves as psychological vaccination against future exploitation, helping people recognize harmful patterns before becoming deeply invested. Noted that cultures where narcissistic behavior faces consistent consequences develop higher emotional intelligence standards and expectations of genuine empathy and accountability in relationships. Relationship evolution catalyst. Believed increasing recognition of these patterns represents consciousness evolution, humanity's growing ability to distinguish between authentic love and sophisticated exploitation disguised as care. He saw empaths who successfully extract themselves from narcissistic relationships as teachers who help others recognize similar patterns, creating protective networks for vulnerable individuals. The liberation in seeing clearly. The narcissist who loses their empathies. Hick validation source reveals who they always were beneath the carefully maintained facade. Its research shows this isn't transformation but exposure, the removal of accommodation that had helped them maintain their mask. When the empath stops playing along, the narcissist faces a choice: genuine self-examination or escalating manipulation. As observations reveal that most choose manipulation over growth, confirming their loving behavior with strategic performance rather than authentic emotion. The most profound transformation belongs to the empath who finally sees clearly. Believed recognizing these patterns develops conscious discernment that protects empathy while refusing to enable exploitation. Your sensitivity becomes your strength when protected by wisdom rather than depleted by accommodation. The same traits that made you vulnerable to manipulation also make you capable of extraordinary authentic connections when you choose partners who honor rather than exploit your emotional depth. The narcissist's post-withdrawal behavior serves as final confirmation of the relationship's true dynamics. Whether they pursue, rage, replace, or rarely transform, their response validates your decision to protect yourself from continued psychological harm. Concluded, these experiences serve as psychological initiations, painful but necessary processes that develop emotional intelligence, boundary skills, and the ability to distinguish between authentic love and sophisticated manipulation. If you've witnessed someone's true character emerge when they lost control over you, comment, "I choose authentic connection over comfortable illusion." Your journey from unconscious accommodation to conscious boundaries contributes to cultural evolution toward healthier relationship standards for everyone. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension. When the empath stops playing along, the truth is always revealed. The behaviors, the escalation, and the manipulations are not signs of love but confirmations of exploitation. Yet, hidden within this painful process is a powerful liberation, the chance to finally see clearly. The empath's greatest gift is not their willingness to endlessly accommodate, but their ability to rise stronger once illusions are shattered. Walking away, setting boundaries, and choosing authentic connections over deceptive performances is not a loss. It is evolution. This journey becomes more than personal healing. It becomes a contribution to cultural change, where manipulation is no longer tolerated and empathy is honored rather than exploited. Remember, your sensitivity is not your weakness. It is your strength, once protected by wisdom and clarity. Let this be a reminder that the end of toxic patterns marks the beginning of authentic freedom. Step forward, not in fear, but with the certainty that genuine connection, respect, and love are waiting beyond the illusions you have left behind.